Welcome back to Zen One Podcast, everybody. This is Tiger, and today I have a special guest, unintentionally, one of my good friends, Dr. Aaron Nicholas, in town in Austin. We're recording at my kitchen, probably the best podcast studio ever.
This is very nice. I like this.
And first, I fed Aaron, so that was very important. He didn't finish
Yes.
the plate, surprisingly.
You gave me a lot of food.
That's what we do in this house. We
Okay.
try to feed very, very well.
I know, but supposedly there's a hike that's coming up, and I need to be mobile.
Right. Are you excited to be in Austin?
I am. I've been wanting to come back to Austin for a while, and there's some places I want to visit. I'm in town for a meeting, so yeah, I'm psyched.
What are you doing? Like, what's going on in Austin?
Alistair McDonald's Sovereign Dental Group is having a get together meeting summit, something of that sort here in Austin this weekend. So that's what I came in for. And then I know that you're here. And then there's a group that I follow on YouTube called Whiskey Tribe, and they have done a crowdsourced distillery, whiskey distillery. And I know it's in Austin somewhere. So I'd like to kind of go see that and see what that's all about. That's good enough right there.
That's awesome. So you've been retired for how many years?
I've been officially retired. I sold the practice in 2020. I worked back for 1 year, was my obligation. I reduced my days and worked back another year. I guess it's 2 now. And this will probably be my last year in active practice. But during that time, I've ramped up teaching courses, putting courses online. We just developed a new hands-on live patient extraction course that's going to go out for the first time in October. And it's going to be in Florida. Previously, we had hoped to roll it out by May. But once we got into the details of how to provide that, it just became a much bigger deal than I thought it was going to be. And so we'll have it all wrapped up and squared away and roll that first one out in October.
So why not just kick back and relax, move to Florida and put your feet up and be done?
Have you met me?
Yeah.
That's just not a plan. I could die of boredom. I don't know that I could do that. As a friend of mine likes to say, it's not that you want to like retire, but you'd like to solve different problems. And I did 34 years of Susie calling out and Amy getting mad at Mary and all that kind of stuff. And it wears on you after a point in time. And just like, yeah, I'm kind of done.
Done.
Yeah, done.
So, part of what we do on this podcast, or the value that we're trying to provide to either listeners or Zen members, is the idea of empowering private practices to continue staying private.
Okay.
And the definition of a private practice to me is a doctor owning a practice or a group of practices, not a private equity, none of that stuff. So
Sure.
Again, I'm not dunking on anybody. I'm just saying that that's what we're trying to do here, is to provide the tools and wisdom to people to continue being excited about private offices. One of the things I wanted to ask, so a lot of times, even in my business, I work really hard, and at some point I'm going to sell it. And it's always like, you think about it as this cargo boat is going to show up at your dock loaded with cash.
Okay.
And you're like, I guess I'm done. And is that really the case?
No, I mean, it wasn't for me. It wasn't. I didn't build the practice to sell it. I built the practice to be a provider and to help some folks out. It came with an entire component of business, which I was sort of not expecting, because I had 2 relatives that had been in the dental practice space, and much older. My uncle graduated in 59. My stepbrother graduated 10, 15, 20 years after that and worked in a rural area. And the dynamics of practice and dealing with employees in a practice was very different for those 2. And I had kind of grown up watching them going, okay, no problem. And then when I got into practice, the ground had definitely shifted, so it was a very different thing. I didn't build it to wait for the boat to show up with the cash. I did get far enough down the road that I was going, okay, I'm X number of years old. How much longer do I want to practice? I've been doing this for a while. Some parts have been a lot of fun. Some parts have been kind of challenging. I had hired consultants almost from day one because I actually almost went bankrupt in year 2 when I got out of dental school, because I opened the practice up right out of school. Didn't know anything about business. They don't teach you about that in dental school then, and they don't now. I'm aware of that. But now you do have the advantage of the internet, which didn't exist when I got out of dental school. And so you have lots of resources that I didn't have. So went ahead and and built the practice. And then along the way, someone said, you've been doing this quite a while, and I'll bet you could help some younger docs if you wanted. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. So I did a little consulting. And then because of that, I saw some need just that was kind of common in a lot of different practices. And so I created courses to try to help fulfill that need. And then so I realized I really kind of liked the teaching thing. And so have been pursuing that as I've been cutting back after I sold the practice and cutting back days in the office. It's almost impossible to work full time in the office and create a whole nother set of courses and training experiences and that sort of thing at the same time. It just kind of wears you down.
So even before this pod, when you and I were driving around, we talked about the burnout and how a lot of people start, finish, sell, don't want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting, I love talking to you about these things, and I hope it doesn't sound wrong. I have a hard time talking about this subject with like a 30-year-old.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like you got a little more to go, and you got time to push. You look 55, you sold your practice, and we can talk about it. Like, what is real burnout? Where does it come from?
So it's interesting to me because the pressures that are on a 30-year-old practice owner now are very different than the pressures that were on a 30-year-old Aaron Nicholas practice owner then. Because First off, they come out of school with an average of $350,000, $400,000 of debt. Like I came out of school with debt, but not that kind of debt. Like I think and don't hate me. I think I came out of school with like $50,000 or $60,000 worth of debt, and then
how much?
$50,000 or $60,000 total.
Total.
Yeah. Now,
undergrad and
to be fair, I lived at home, undergrad and dental school, because it was right in the middle, and I commuted both ways, and that was actually thought out because I didn't want to have a huge debt at the end, because I knew I wanted to open my own practice. And
let's come back to the real life. That doesn't happen again, okay?
Yeah. So that's not going to happen again. So that's one thing. Number two is when I was a dental practice owner and I started to feel a little burned out or whatever, it's like, well, you got some debt, you got this business, you got to do this thing, and literally you don't see all the other options available. So remember, there's no internet. Okay, so anything you learn out about practice is coming out of some journal from some group that's usually sending it to you to sell you something, and they're not talking about those sorts of things. As opposed to now, where you have Facebook groups and people are like, "Hey, this is the way this feels." And back then, I just think that we were maybe less truthful and less honest in general about what the experience was like. Whereas now people are much more willing to like talk about how they feel about things, et cetera. And I think that's partially a societal thing. And I think it's also depending on what group the Facebook group you would go into or coaching group you go into, or, that sort of thing. So I just think that, like maybe you're starting to feel a little burned out, but there aren't really a whole lot of options. As opposed to now where there are just a ton of options. Okay. I've had some younger docs say to me, "Oh man, you like came up like in the golden age of dentistry. You're able to have a fee for service practice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." I did have a fee for service practice, but I went through having an HMO practice and having a PPO practice until I finally got to the fee for service practice. So yes and no, still possible. Also depends on your business model. If you want an associate driven practice, it's a lot harder to do fee for service than it is PPO. Okay, for sure. So anyway, so you're cooking along and maybe you're 30 or 35 and it's feeling like it's dragging a little bit and it doesn't feel so good. You could go look out there and you see people that are making a living doing nothing but sleep. You see people that are doing nothing but making a living doing like all-on-4s and implant dentistry.
You can see people on Instagram doing literally nothing and driving Ferraris too.
This is true. I prefer the Lamborghini. No, I don't. No, but you can get in groups and talk to people and go to training, and they're like actually doing it. I know 3 or 4 docs that do nothing but go from office to office and do wisdom teeth. So like these are some of the options available. I know people that have been unable to practice, and now all they're doing is sleep and ortho. Because you don't have to sit down and assume the position and and put your hands in people's mouths and et cetera, et cetera. So just the flexibility now is so much greater than it was back then. And I think because of you're willing to talk about it, you can see some other things easily. You know, go on the internet and, like you said, you can surf around all day and find people doing all kinds of things, which is both a positive and a negative because now, you get on Instagram
You get
and
grifters.
I'm sorry.
And you get grifters too.
Yeah, you do. But what a lot of people said is, Instagram and Facebook back in the day, that's basically the highlight reel. And so they're showing you their best stuff and the great stuff that happened and the amazing day they did producing however many dollars it was, but it's not their day to day. And so it's a lot easier to get FOMO and a lot easier to feel like you're not doing as good because you're not one of those guys.
So what is the source of burnout? Do you think it's still the same as you were coming up and building your practice, or now it's different?
I think the source of burnout when I was coming up was much more, okay, we're going to do a bunch of fillings, we're going to do some crown and bridge, and tomorrow we're going to do some fillings, or we're going to do some crown and bridge, and maybe we'll do an extraction. Then we're going to do some fillings, we're going to do, it's the same thing over and over. Now I think the source of burnout is much more staff issues. We all know that it is just hard to find staff. And then it's hard to keep them. And then they'll go down the street for $1 an hour more.
So back in the days, it wasn't an issue?
It was, but not like this.
Can you explain?
So back in the day, we might have had trouble finding a hygienist, okay, which is actually how we started doing a team hygiene, assisted hygiene program kind of thing. But like we tried 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 out, and they just weren't coming up to snuff, and we couldn't quite train them up to snuff, et cetera, et cetera. And so we went to the different model. These days, you could put an ad out there. It could be 6 months to a year before you get a single person to answer.
To an ad.
Yeah. I mean, at least you're in the game in scenario one. Now it's like you're almost not even in the game. I mean, I know general dentists have gone back to doing their own cleaning sometimes because they can't find the hygienist and someone needs to take care of these folks. And that just, that's a whole different level of stress. And I feel like most of the levels of stress right now is about finding people. I want to say work ethic, but everybody's a little different, and every generation thinks that they were the last ones that really worked hard. And you go look at those old black and white movies from like the 40s or something, and there's this snooty, aristocratic woman who goes, "It's so hard to find good help these days," And so I think that's just a common theme that goes through. But I do think there's a very different work ethic as we look at the different generations as they're coming through, and what they're willing to do and what they expect from work.
I was talking to a college student, believe it was yesterday or day before yesterday. So she's at Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about entrepreneurship. This is a little segue, but I think it will connect some dots for people. And we got into the subject of work-life balance because she was interviewing me and for the business and entrepreneurship. And what if I had started the business one day? What is your recommendation? What would you do differently? And I said, I wouldn't focus on the work-life balance. Like, that's not the reason you started business.
Mm-hmm.
To me, American dream, it's another segue, is not a house with a white fence. To me, American dream is you come to this country with no English, you can start a business and somebody will pay you if you do good work.
Mm-hmm.
That's American dream. And you can build your business. You can pay taxes, you can be a good citizen and build up the business as big as you want, as big as your mind allows you to build. And so we were talking about this work-life balance, and I said, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe your generation is a little bit lost in a 2-dimensional work-life balance when it's actually 3-dimensional. You're missing one more dimension, which is your goals, right? So you can't be really work-life balance if you have a goal, because you got to work hard to accomplish that goal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're only looking 2-dimensional, you're lost, because it is a work-life balance issue, because you work and you need a balance, you need a life if you don't have any goals. And so, I don't know, maybe you can feel it the same way, because I don't, and she actually agreed. That was the point. And she said, yeah, a lot of my friends don't have any goals. They're settling for less than what they can accomplish. And they just don't want to push harder. And it's a separate conversation why they don't want to push harder. But it is something going on where people don't set goals anymore, or even higher goals.
But are they not setting higher goals? Are they not setting goals because they want a work-life balance and they're afraid that if they get too caught up in their goals, then that's going to push that part of the quote-unquote work-life balance too hard, and now they're going to be out of balance. And so it's like, well, if I want to, if I want to build Amazon with it, whatever you think about Bezos, if I want to build an Amazon, I'm going to have to work my butt off,
Yeah.
and I'm probably not going to be home as much as, et cetera, et cetera. And then they go, well, I don't know that that's the life I want. I don't know. I haven't followed Bezos at all, but most people that run really big organizations have a really strong drive to do that thing. I don't think that happens by accident. And at the same time, I think it's very easy to let work take over your life because there's always something else to do. I mean, that was one of the things I noticed as soon as I got in practice, that like I could do work stuff. I could work all day as a dentist and do work stuff all night running the business if I let that happen, and that it's really easy to have happen because there's always something else to do. A number of years back, I hired my first personal assistant, executive assistant, whatever you want to call it, because I could get done everything that I wanted to get done. And it's really interesting because people go, I don't know if I really need one. I don't know about this, I don't know about that. But what you find is that you're turning down opportunities that would probably actually make you more successful because you can't pick up all the details to make that happen. So today I flew from Baltimore down here to Austin. And I'm going out of the country next week. And then when I come back in the country, I'm going to another event about 2 or 3 weeks after that. And then there's another one 2 or 3 weeks after that. The level of detail and the arranging the room and arranging the train and arranging the plane and making sure that all the accommodations are all set and all put in one place is just, it's mind numbing to me if you don't have somebody to do that. So I have someone that actually does that. And all I have to, she'll say, hey, these are the things you can do. You do this, 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 and this. What do you want to do? And I just go A, B, C, A, B, and they take care of it. And then they just send me the confirmations. It sits in an app on the phone, and it's all done. But for me to do that, that's like a 2 or 3 day, hours on the phone, checking with different people, going back and forth. But because I can do that, I can come out here and we can hang out. We can do a podcast. I can attend the event that I need to attend over here. And I have time. If I wasn't doing this, then I would be working on getting that course for October ready because I have finishing touches to put on that. And it makes me more productive. But if you don't have that, people start, they're like, well, I just don't know if I need them. And the truth of the matter is you'll never know until you actually have them. But if your time's getting tight, it's like, it's easily worth the money. I don't know anybody that's hired a personal assistant that's learned to work with them, et cetera, where they're like, man, I don't want to live without them anymore. It just makes my life so much simpler.
I always say I want to be like you when I grow up.
You haven't been hanging around with me that long. I don't know that you know.
I do know. I want to be like you when I grow up. So, and it seems like now these days there are different mechanisms of coping with stress and burnout, right? So like, I mean, weed wasn't around that much back then, but now it's okay to smoke here and there once in a while, right? Mushrooms was not a thing back then. Now it's here and there a little bit, and people do that. The psychedelics. I'm not promoting any of it. I'm just bringing it up to say, to drive the point. It seems like there are different sets of issues now, and there are also different sets of coping mechanisms available. So, and the question is still why there's so much burnout. We even talked about suicide rate.
Yeah. The comment I had made to you was in the last 3 months, I know of 3 dentists that have committed suicide. One that I knew fairly well and liked. One that I just know of because he's up the street from me, and one was somebody had mentioned it on like a Facebook page or something. But that's like 3 in 3 months. It's crazy. What's really interesting is I have a good friend who's a veterinarian, and I was talking to her, and I said, do you guys have similar stuff going on in the vet space? She's like, it's very common in the vet space. And so then I started thinking, okay, so what are the commonalities between these things? And it's like, I think what it is that the primary technician or the primary producer many times is also the business owner, is also the HR department, is also the government compliance guy, and you just keep adding this stuff up. And it's like, you just don't have enough time to do all that stuff by yourself. And if you can't figure out some way to get some help with that, it's a problem. I think if you're accomplishing anything in life, you're making a mess and you are creating stress. And so the question is, how are you going to do that? So you can have an assistant that kind of helps you keep your mess cleaned up. You need to have some sort of a stress relief regulating, mechanism. And, for some people, it's going to be, oh, I'm going to go get some drinks after work, or I'm going to go smoke, or I'm going to go do some mushrooms, or I'm going to go run, or I'm going to go, and
Or I'm going to sell my practice.
you could do that. I mean, that's not stress relief. That's like, let's get ready. Let's be done.
That's the coping mechanism for a lot of people.
It is.
Unfortunately.
It is. I agree with you. I agree with you. And the thing that really bugs me is when I see people who are like not even out of dental school yet. They're like, oh, I'm so stressed about this. And I'm like, dude, that is what dental school is. It is nothing but stress, and the truth of the matter is, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it is kind of a good thing, because once you've suffered in dental school, and I hate to say it like that, but once you've suffered in dental school and figured out how to juggle all the balls, it's a lot easier to juggle all those balls when you get out. Should people have to juggle the balls? And I don't know, but I think anytime you're in a business and you're running a business, you're working for yourself, I think you end up juggling them. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Yeah. So I remember I think it was 2021. I do know you for quite a while now, actually. So I remember 2021, I came to you and we went for a long walk. And we just went through the woods and stuff. And you said, I told you about my story with my health conditions and back issues and stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're like, just get a book. I'm like, what the f- you talking about? Book? And you're like, yeah, get a book. But the funny thing is, I've known you already, and I know how you look at things from a very simplistic way. So you have this I don't know if you know this or if anybody tells you, I'm sure people do. Like, you have this.
No one's told me I'm simple yet, but go ahead.
It's like you have a gift of like, okay, so what is the real issue? Okay, so what if we just do it this way? And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't think about it that way. So you have an ability to dissect things in an easy way. I don't know if you noticed, that book is actually over there.
I did notice that, but cool.
And I have to like flip through some pages once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And
Me too.
just to remind yourself. And it's a funny way, like it just goes away. The pain goes away.
Yeah.
Like you go through. And again, I don't want to woo-woo people. They'll figure out for themselves. And I can link up the book. I think even though I read it every day, it's Healing the Back Pain.
It's called Healing Back Pain by a physician named John Sarno, who's long gone. But he looked at back pain and when it occurred, and he looked at success rates in surgery and that sort of thing. And what he realized was that most of the back pain is really really stress induced.
Right. Oxygen deprivation.
Yeah. And he goes through the whole thing, but I've given that book out to a number of people. Usually they are younger, like in their 30s to 40s. They usually have a family. They're like at the maximum point of stress. Young family, maybe the wife is or isn't working. They're starting a practice, building a practice, trying to make something happen. They've got kids they got to be responsible to. And it's just like all this stress, and it ends up going somewhere. And for a lot of them, it ends up going to their back. And that was my experience. Do you want to hear this story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
We got a little bit of time there.
okay. So I was in practice and like I had this back pain and it was lower back pain, every dentist thing, back pain. And then, I'm stretching and I'm strengthening and I'm doing all this stuff and it just still hurts. It still hurts. And I was going on a ski trip with a bunch of friends and I'm like, I got to figure this out. I went to the bookstore. That's how long ago it was. And went to the shelf and I got 3 books about back pain. And the first 2 were the normal, stretching, strengthening, et cetera, et cetera. And this was the 3rd book. And what this guy does is he goes through and he gives you all the evidence. And then in his practice, he would actually make people come in. He was a surgeon, and he would make people come in and listen to him give lectures about this and about the success rates, et cetera, et cetera. And what he found was that 9 times out of 10, once they realized that these things they think are wrong with their back have no correlation with or no causation with the back pain, and many times no correlation with the back pain, all of a sudden, magically, it would go away. And so in writing the book, what he was trying to give you was that experience of listening through the lectures, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm on my ski trip, and I'm like, I'm dying just flying out there just because the position you have to sit, et cetera, et cetera. And every day I was on vacation, my back pain got less and less and less, even though I was skiing hard every day. And at the end of a week, I came back with no back pain. I think partially due to not being in the practice and being stressed, partially due to the physical exercise, and partially due to the book. And one of the things he says in the book is like goes away, and then it's not unusual for that pain to show up again. So I had low back pain, and then as I'm going back to go home on the plane, I'm starting to get upper back pain, which he talked about this exact
Right.
phenomenon. I'm like, oh no. Oh no, 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 no. We're not going through this again.
Yeah.
And I went through and read through the book again, and then all of a sudden it just sort of dissipated,
Yeah.
And so yeah. So that's whenever things are getting tight and the pain's coming back, it's like, yep, just got to go read that couple chapters in the
Yeah.
book again. And yeah.
Lately, it's been on my counter all the time, but I've given this book away also to a lot of people. It's really interesting to get the feedback. And some people still go to their doctors and pay lots of money when it's really that easy. I mean, it's not easy to implement, but the solution is easy. Let me put it that way.
It's simple. The
Right.
solution is simple.
Yeah,
For sure.
simple is a better way.
I mean, obviously, and he says in the book, like you have to check out all the structural stuff first. Like you can't just go, oh, I have back pain. It must not be anything really. Got to go and look at it, make sure there's there's no tumors, there's no cysts, there's no whatever. But I also have gifted that book more probably than anything else to young docs because I see them starting to go down that road. And they're seeing their doctors and nothing's helping. I've tried this. Hey guys, anybody else have something new? And I'll just send it to them. A lot of times, if I know they're on Audible, you can actually buy a book for somebody else and send it to them. So I've done that a number of times. And for most of them, they're like, yeah, that really helped. So
Yeah. So back to my question about the book, the reason I brought it up. So when you talk to younger dentists, let's just say she or he owns the practice, has the family, little kids, maybe no kids, but let's assume they're kids. It's either a startup or they acquired the practice. And do you have any solution for them, just like that book for the back pain, but like any solution that you can dissect and say, yeah, you just need to focus on that to avoid that burnout?
I would say the very first thing I would say is go get some good coaching about business and maybe dental specific business, because right now you got trained in dentistry and quite frankly, coming out of dental school, it's going to be 5, 6, 7 years before you're like a master. And that's if you're doing CE and working at it hard, et cetera, et cetera. You have 0 years in business unless you have some other experience in life that has kind of gotten you that information. But that was the biggest thing. I personally turned over 2 perfectly good staffs of experienced people in my first 3 years in practice. And like I would go on vacation. Next thing I know, when I came back, like I would have 2-week notices sitting on my desk because they just used that opportunity to go out and interview and find other jobs. I was so bad as a boss that the temp agency wouldn't send people to me. That's how bad a boss I was. And at some point I literally sat down in a chair and I went, okay, what the heck's going on?
Do you talk to yourself like, okay, Aaron, or like, how do you talk to yourself?
Only occasionally, and I'll just go, okay, like what's going on?
Or like Nicholas, like, how do you talk to yourself? I'm really curious.
I don't really generally. No, I don't really generally talk to myself. But I was sitting down, like trying to reason and figure out what's going on. I'm like, okay, now what's going on here? Like, I'm the only person that's still here. Therefore, I must be the problem. And that's kind of where it started. Going, okay, I need to figure out how to be a boss and how to be a good boss. Employer would probably be a better word. And that's probably where I first started really looking at. Okay, I need to grow up in this area of my life at least. And I need to learn how to do this better. And some people are natural leaders, and some people are naturally gregarious, and some people naturally know how to talk to people. I was none of these things. And so I kind of had to learn each of those pieces all along the way.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things to unpack. You said get dental coaching.
Yes.
How do you pick one? There's so many options out there. Which one is good for you?
So, a couple of different things. One is not every coaching/consulting group is going to be right for you at every stage of practice. So, some of them are broader than others, and some of them are very focused. Like if you want to run a cosmetic only practice, that's probably one set of coaching, although the others could probably help you. If you want to run like in practice that does nothing but surgery and all on fours, then that's a whole nother animal. And then there's just some general coaching. I had been through 1, 2, 3. I think I've been through 4 or 5 different coaches at different times. The last one that I hired was Dental Success Institute with Mark Costas, and that's the one where I actually coach for them now. And that's the one that seemed to be the most complete and really kind of looked at the overhead side of the equation, where I don't really think anybody else was doing that. And I think maybe that's becoming more common now, but at least then it wasn't at all. And the truth of the matter is most people are like, oh, well, produce more and you'll do better. And it's like, it's like if you're not doing the right thing and you just do more of not the right thing, you don't get better results. So if you're not watching the overhead, if you don't have standards, parameters, goals for those sorts of things, and you just keep trying to produce more and more and more, the overhead animal just follows you right up the scale. So once I started with them, I really got a hold of my overhead, and then push that down to like 51, 52%. And now if you scale, now you're really getting something out of it. But if you're running at 75% overhead, which I was,
Plus 30% doctor pay,
exactly.
then what are you taking home?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Exactly. Well, I was the head doctor
Yeah.
and the head technician, and so there's they're looking at that from that and understanding what's going on with the overhead. It's really hard to go, oh, I'll bring somebody in and pay him 30%. Like, I can't pay him 30%. The overhead's too high. So that was part of the issue was going on.
Yeah. Okay. So you said 5 to 6 years with the CE.
Yes.
Specifically in business. We don't count like going to implant pathway to get
No. I said
implants and stuff. That's purely business.
no. So I said 5 to 6 years doing dentistry with CE before you're a master. My opinion. So other people might get there faster. It depends on how fast you learn, how fast you implement, what you're doing. But you need a certain number of reps before you can be a master. I mean, you can go to the best schools, the best whatever, but unless you've been playing the violin for 5, 10, whatever the number of years is, it's hard to be a prodigy.
So dentistry plus the CE, plus master. Let's hypothetically somebody signs up with Mark Custis, right?
Okay.
Then, do you then continue going to other CEs, other business courses and stuff like that? Just walk me through.
So that's mostly business CE, okay, and practice management CE, that sort of thing. That's the sort of the side that he deals with the most. But then there are a number of other people that do. Then you still need clinical CE, So I have a hands-on extraction course. We have the 1 hour molded root canal built crown.
Plug.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you saw that, did you? We have some online videos. There's Colorado Surgical Institute does implant stuff. You've got a number of people doing implants, different extraction courses, usually outside the U.S. You have courses to help you to be for ortho, for sleep. So all this stuff that is still here, it's available, and just learning the business end of it isn't going to get you closer there, but you have to be excellent at that. Because if you're not excellent at that, you can bring in all the people you want. They're going to go out the door the other way because the results aren't good. So you need to be excellent at being a dentist, and you need to be excellent at being a business owner. And only one of them you went to school for, and that's going to take a long time to get really, really, really good. And the other one you didn't go to school for at all, and you got to figure that out. So yeah, there's just a lot to learn when you first get out.
Wow. So let's talk about a little bit about the business side of things, right? So let's assume that the clinical is going to be there, or the doctors naturally will be excited about the clinical side of things. Again, looking back through your entire career, if you would write a book,
okay,
what would be your chapter number 1?
Wow, that's a great question. Chapter number 1.
I think you should write a book.
I'll tell you, when some of the stuff happens to the staff, I know I should write a book.
Yeah.
It'd have to be something about kind of keeping things in perspective, realizing that this doesn't come naturally to anybody, and that it's a learning process. But I'd have to mull it over a little bit more to put that into something succinct. But I think for me especially, I grew up with an uncle and a stepbrother who both were in dentistry. We had Thanksgiving together. Didn't seem like there was anything special about those guys. They did really well. And when I got out, I just figured that's the way it was going to go. But the circumstances of dentistry and business in general were much different than it were when those guys got out. And even when I started having problems, I would ask them, hey, what do you think about this? And they would do everything they could to help me. But the truth of the matter is they had no idea because they had never dealt with this stuff before. So you definitely want to be, if you're going to get coaching, you want to be by someone who's up on things as they stand right now, because the environment changes so fast.
Okay, then let me ask you a different question. What fears do you have for the profession of dentistry?
So I don't know if I should say this out loud. All right.
I'll
So
stay between you and I.
yeah, just between you, me, and whoever's listening. My biggest
Sorry,
fear
Mom.
about dentistry right now is that we have so many courses out about business and how to be more successful and how to do really fancy dentistry or little pieces of dentistry. It's like, who's going to take care of the common man is my biggest fear about dentistry right now. And I don't have an answer for that because it seems like, and you and I talked about this, a lot of folks are thinking, I'm going to get out, I'm going to work for a couple, 3 years, I'm going to get me some associates, I'm going to build this stuff up, and then I'm going to sell it, have a payday, and I'm off to do whatever. But in the middle, someone has to train that practice owner who I think is going to take 5 to 7 years before they can be a master, and that's working at it. And then as they bring their associates on, let's say they bring them on in year 3 or year 4, they're not a master yet. They can do some. They're going to have to hire somebody from outside to train, but you probably get more day to day. You probably get better and you work out all the little bits and pieces in more of a day to day kind of relationship. Okay, so shameless plug. I run an online clinical coaching group called the 90-Day Accelerator and we meet twice a week and we do that for 90 days. And we go through all the different disciplines as well as how to arrange your work, how to arrange your schedule, how to figure out how long it takes you to do this, how to become faster, how to work with assistants, how to get in and out of hygiene and not have it take, half of your other appointment that you're trying to get back to. Just all those sorts of things. And like we're meeting every day, we're meeting twice a week. And my first question to them is, what happened to you today? How was it? Was it good? Was it bad? Anything interesting happen? And we kind of talk through all those different things because then other stuff comes up. And I'm actually really looking hard at making some sort of like a continuing support-ish kind of group because even with going through the 90-Day Accelerator, even going to a root canal class or an implant class or whatever, that doesn't get the whole job done. That like gets your foot in the door, but then all the little nuances. And thankfully, most of the guys who are teaching this kind of stuff and women who are teaching this kind of stuff are very open to, hey, shoot me an email, shoot me a text. Like if you're having a problem, let me know. I want to help, and that's kind of where I am too. I hand out my email, I hand out my phone number, like right, left, and center all the time. And I want to hear back. And if I don't hear back, then I'm like, I'll text everybody from a class. I'm like, I haven't heard from anybody. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Let's talk. Is everything working? Like, is there something I said would work and that you found out it didn't work? Let's talk about why it is. Because I know the stuff I teach works because I've been doing it for decades. And I've been teaching now for close to a decade. So I know this stuff works. If it's not working for you, there's a piece you're missing or that I didn't explain well enough or the way I explained it didn't make sense to you. And we can get that figured out. I've got 2 hands and 10 fingers just like you do. Chances are really good you can do the same things I'm doing.
Yeah. So why does it worry you? Like, why is it your fear?
Because someone's got to treat me. No, if we're doctors and we decide we want to be doctors to help take care of people and to improve their quality of life, and yet we never get to where we're really good and we can really take care of that stuff. I mean, if you're a dentist, how many times have you had a patient come in and go, I hate coming to the dentist. I had this thing done and it was awful. And they stood on my chest, which is my favorite story. They stood on my chest to take the tooth out, or they were doing this root canal and like it hurt the whole time, or they did this filling and it was just really high. And I came back and they said it was fine. And, you hear those stories over and over. Well, that's just someone that hasn't gotten to that level of mastery yet where that stuff can run smoothly. And if that's the way our profession is looked at, and if that's everybody's experience in dentistry, those things are real. Someone really did have a tough time taking a tooth out. Someone really was in pain all the way through their root canal. Someone really did get a filling done and it wasn't sitting right and someone didn't take care of them. Who's going to take care of them? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. It's just like, I hope everybody has a practice and builds it really big and sells it for a bunch of money, but who's going to take care of those people that we got into the profession for in the first place? That's my biggest concern in dentistry. And I have no answers. And it's just kind of a question that floats around in my head most of the time.
Do you feel like you're alone in this?
No. I know of a number of people that are doing a really good job running big practices. I know a number of people that are doing a really good job running small practices. It's just a matter of not letting that get out of sight. Because we spend so much time and so much on the internet is about, the the success in dentistry and the big payoff and the this and that. It's just that we need to not lose sight of that as well. I mean, you do a really good job as well.
Wow. I didn't think about it at all. This is so interesting.
You didn't think about who's going to do the work?
That would be on top of your mind, and that would be your worry.
I guess it's mostly because as I look out on the internet, I feel like I see more business courses and how do we be more successful and how do we get the big payoff than I do instructional stuff about basic stuff. Because coming out of dental school, especially those guys and girls that came out in 2021, maybe even 22, they didn't get a ton of experience because guess what? COVID. And even when you do come out, depending on what school you went to, I regularly teach folks in my endo course who did either zero endo on a live human, or did one anterior tooth on a live human. And that's how they got out of dental school. It's like, well, how can they do endo when they come out? They just can't. I mean, it's just not going to work. So I see that over and over, and people are coming out and they just don't have that kind of experience. And really, they've always said that dental school is a license to learn, which I get, but you need to have someone around to kind of help out, And so I think most owner docs, and I did this too when I was an owner doc and had associates, most owner docs are like, okay, so we're going to meet once a week. We'll talk over cases, we'll do X, Y, and Z. And that works for like the first month. And then, the next week it's like, oh, you got to go pick your kid up, or you got to drop the dog off at the vet, or do those kinds of things. And then pretty soon it goes to nothing. And then at the end of the year, both doctors are looking at each other, and the owner doc's looking at the associate going, dude, you are not producing any more than you were the day you came in the door. Why are you so slow? And the associate doc's going, doc, like you promised to mentor me, and like we had a couple of meetings, but I haven't,
and then on top of it, now you put an AI in the office that tells me that I missed the filling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't think, again, I don't know the product that well, but I don't think it explains why you missed the filling. I don't think it gives you the wisdom that was earned or gained over the last 20 years to teach the new and young doctor why they missed something.
Yeah, well, I also think that the AI, we're really, really new in the AI game with the diagnosis and that sort of thing. I haven't messed with it in our office at all. But what I hear is that some of them are better than others, which is understandable. And you don't just go with the AI. You look at it and then you do your clinical evaluation, and then you decide, is this something I want to fill, or is this something we're going to try to remineralize, or where are we with this? Yeah. So the AI is not. It's helpful, and it's a little early yet.
Yeah.
For me.
So then let's try to wrap up with something that gets you excited. Like, so now, you probably have 20, 30 years more to go.
Maybe not quite that long. Yeah.
Right.
Good. Anyway,
I can't imagine you retiring, but still. And I'm really excited that people like you care about clinical side of things. And I think the job of your generation is to teach the young generation in any way possible, like just to share the knowledge and get the new generation up and running. So I'm really excited you're doing this. And I'm really curious to see what you're excited about, like genuinely when you wake up, or what keeps you going in dentistry, or like, what do you think? Why do you think the future of dentistry is bright?
I think the future of dentistry is bright because we are just seeing things that we've never seen before. We're considering things we've never considered before, like airway, like how important it is to sleep. And some of that's also has to do with our medical, brothers and sisters. For me, when I get up in the morning, the thing that gets me going is going, how can I teach this more efficiently? How can I transfer the stuff that I know works so that they can pick it up and they can use it faster and with more predictably, and that sort of thing. That's most of what I'm really thinking about. The idea that comes to you in the shower is like, oh, I could do a diagram that looks like this, and that would explain that better because I had a question from the guy last time, and and so those are the sorts of things that I do. That course I've been teaching has been, I think it's close to a decade old now, and I always I'll get it set exactly, and then I'll just keep doing it over and over, and it's different. As hard as I try not to make it different every time, it's different every time because I find a better explanation, a better example, a better whatever to put in there that I think will help even more. And so we go through that every single time. But yeah, that's the thing that really interests me now is the teaching end of that and making that really as smooth as possible. To your point about the older generation needing to teach the younger generation, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think that should be the responsibility of the older generation because guess who has all the experience? Those guys have been doing it. You can't get so far out that you're no longer in touch, which is why I always insist on my assistants teaching me how to use technology rather than doing it for me, because as soon as you lose the next piece, the one after that builds on the one before it. And if you didn't know the one before it, you're kind of done. So I'm always kind of hanging in there to learn that stuff and not let it get away. But yeah, it's the teaching of it and the kind of that human aspect of it. Yeah. And just trying to pass that down. 30 years of experience can't be reacquired in, a couple of weekend courses. It's just not. It's just going to take time and reps and working all those little nuances out, I think, before you can kind of get to that point of where I feel like, someone's really mastered what's going on.
So what do you think is the true mastery in your opinion?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. So let's just say somebody who's listening, or maybe not, but they're like, you know what? The side of dentistry that excites me the most is clinical.
Okay.
And I want to be known, or at least I want to go home and know that I've done the absolute best job in dentistry. Like put me next to any name and they will evaluate my job and they'll say, yeah, that was awesome. Like that, what you did was pretty cool. So how do you define that mastery and how does one achieve that mastery?
I think a lot of it is looking at results. Any procedure that you perform has a couple, three pieces of it. There's you, your expertise, your training, et cetera, et cetera. There is your patient, their level of compliance, what they will allow you to do, because sometimes people are so non-compliant, you can't do your best work. And then there's what's actually going on, the extraction that has, something funky going on that is going to make it take longer. It could be more complicated, might result in more post-op problems, okay, that you can't control. But you are controlling as much as you can, as well as you can. To me, that's the mastery part. And sometimes the mastery part is realizing you couldn't have done it any better. Even knowing what you know now, I would have done it exactly the same. And then there's the thing that I always tell younger docs. I'm like, in dentistry, humility is always one patient away. Like you are perfect at getting teeth numb until you get that patient and you've thrown everything you know to throw at them and they're still not numb. And you're just kind of like, this wasn't the day, and to be able to walk away from that and, you never feel great about that, but at least not to be devastated by that. And like, I'm such a screw up, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get it done? All those kinds of thoughts. Unfortunately, unless the dental school system has changed quite a bit since I got out, and from what I've been hearing from folks, we don't make it easy as instructors in dental schools on the students that are coming through. Now, I haven't set foot inside of a dental school for instructional purposes in decades, so I could be 100% wrong. And if I am, my apologies, and please forgive me. I know not what I do, but at the same time, I've talked to enough young docs that have had a fairly fitful experience coming through dental school.
Wow. Where people can find you?
Oh, people find me. Phone number, 410-207-3527, 410-207-3527. It's my actual phone number. I won't answer it if you're not in my contacts, but leave me a message and I'll call you back. Or you can contact me on my email, which is anicholasdds@gmail.com, ANICHOLAS.
I'll link it up.
DDS@gmail.com.
I'll link up the email, not the phone number.
Okay, cool. And then Monday Morning Dentistry is the website. And so right on the front is all the hands-on courses, so you don't have to go dig anywhere to get those. And then the online courses are another layer back. But it's all there. There's also some free information, free talks, some free trainings, and some free things to send out. So we're there.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you. And if I'd be a young doctor, I would be all over you. Like on speed dial.
We're just friends, Tiger.
I know. But if I'd be a dentist, oh my God. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you, Tiger.
I appreciate your time.
Yeah, take care.